As usual, we're going to talk about web browsers today, but we're going to start off with questions and answers. Anyone have any questions?
I wondered if anybody there has used Vimini or Zimini, or it's some sort of a program that claims to use AI to clean up, that is, sharpen the focus of old black and white photos or any other photos.
I
Rimini,
haven't
maybe with an R.
I haven't used that. I've tried others, and I'm not. I probably have tried 100 different others, and I'm not terribly impressed with them. But the way in which I evaluate something that says it's going to sharpen it, I take the photograph at screen resolution. I apply whatever touches it says it's going to do, and then I blow it up till it's 72 dots per inch, which most photographs are 600 to 800 dots per inch. You blow it up at 72 dots per inch, you get a real good view of what's actually there. And I noticed an awful lot of artifacting. It looks like snow around the edges of where it does the enhancements. And I have yet to find one that does a really good job of that. If you spend a lot of time painstakingly retouching it, you can do a better job. But when I say painstaking, this one photograph of my mother that was taken in the 1930s, I probably spent 4 or 5 hours on that one photo. So it's not something I really want to do unless I have a good reason. A lot of them say that they do all kinds of wonderful things, but there are usually side effects. For example, the program I use the most for photographs is Lightroom, Adobe Lightroom Classic. And it's got this thing called the spot remover, where you click on a spot where, say, you had dirt on the lens or something like that, and it goes out onto the photograph and tries to find something that has the same color intensity and then overlays that over your spot. And to the naked eye, it looks quite good. But if you then turn on, if you change the histogram of the photograph, you can easily see where you did that kind of touch. Now, that's not really an issue for me because nobody's going to look at my photographs with a histogram. They need the original photo and all that. But when you're trying to recover an old print, you run into that kind of thing all the time. For example, looking at you on the monitor right now, there's a sharp line around your skull because the ceiling's blurred out. It's focused on you and not on what's behind you. Well, if it was trying to improve that, if you looked at it real closely, you'd see a whole line of snow right around the edges of where your head is. And I've yet to find one that really does a good job of doing that. There's a professor at University of California, San Diego, who's been doing retouching of old NASA photographs back in the 1960s, where this film is falling apart. And he's come up with a really good technique that takes only 5 or 6 hours per photo, and using a supercomputer. And that's nice to know. And we've talked a lot about what he's doing. I know him because he was in a computer science class I taught many, many, many years ago. But I haven't found one yet that doesn't have that artifacting. And it might be fine for your purposes. Photoshop does sharpening. A lot of things do sharpening, and that's basically what it's trying to do when it's doing that. It's called sharpening, where you take something that's fuzzy and make it sharper. But it usually adds quite a bit of artifacting. So I haven't seen anything that I really like yet. There are some online programs where you upload the photograph and you do that. And I don't like that for 2 reasons. First of all, they now have a copy of a photograph. And second is, again, the quality just isn't what I would like it to be. To give you a really clear, concrete metric, this one photograph that I uploaded was 9.5 megabytes, 19.5 megabytes. And when I downloaded the sharpened image, it was 3 megabytes. So, no. lots of smoke and mirrors was taking place, but it wasn't really improving the photograph.
Thanks.
I'm not saying
Lawrence, I
don't
have a
look for
question.
them. It's just that I haven't found one. Yes.
Yesterday, my wife was opening something in her iPad and something popped up that said it was from systemmeasures.life. And then 3 tabs opened. One said security error, one said scanning your device, and one said bonus. You ever heard of such a thing?
No, but it's a scam.
I figured it was. I figured it was. Should she just ignore it or?
Now, what was she doing at the time?
I was opening a sports,
She was opening some ESPN sports thing.
and these just popped up as tabs, and I immediately X'd out, got out of them, canceled them.
I couldn't hear all of that, but
They popped up when she was opening something from ESPN, and when they popped up, she immediately kind of exited out of them.
okay. And this was on a web browser.
iPad. What was
iPad.
it?
It was in Chrome.
It was in Chrome.
Okay. The first thing you should do is just quit the browser.
Okay.
When you quit a browser on a Mac, when you quit a browser, it pretty much quits everything. On an iPad, it's a little bit sneaky because we will quit the browser, but the browser is actually open. There's a trick to actually close something on an iPad, but basically the first thing you do is just quit it. And then the second thing you do is that since it's an iPad, I would immediately open up Chrome and go someplace that you know is safe, like CNN or the Strait Mac User Group website or something that you know is safe, because that causes it to rewrite its cache. So basically it
Okay.
overwrites junk that it has in it. The most common way to hijack a Mac today, I'm not aware of any successful exploits with web browsers per se, but you can hijack a Mac. You can hijack older Macs, older iPads, older phones with PDFs. That's one reason why it's really not a good idea to be running around with macOS 10.5 and things like that, because they haven't had security updates in years. And a PDF is actually it's a programming language. It's not just a document, it's a programming language that you can embed all kinds of instructions in it. So you can get a PDF form from the IRS that tells you to enter your social security number. And if you enter the wrong number of digits, it'll actually come back and say, no, that's not right. So there's actually programming built into a PDF. And that's one reason why they can be used for taking things over. So with a PDF, if you accidentally launch a PDF that you don't know, you don't quite know how you managed to get that PDF to launch, immediately quit out of it, because that is a viable vector. With a web browser on an iMac or an iPhone, just quit it, but don't worry too much about it, because I'm not aware of any, unless you have a really old iPhone or iPad, I'm not aware of anything that can actually threaten it through the web browser. There's Apple security list, which I've mentioned in past meetings, that you can subscribe to, that emails you when Apple has security patches out. And you'll see, if you read through the messages, which I admit are very cryptic, the most commonly thing that's patched is something called WebKit. And I'm going to talk about WebKit tonight because we're talking about browsers. WebKit is the package of code that Apple uses to build web browsers. WebKit, they've actually published it, so it's now an open source project, and you can make your own WebKit browser. But it's also used for drawing things on the screen. A lot of things on the screen that are drawn on the screen are actually done with CSS, which is called cascading style sheets, or it's done with HTML graphics. So a lot of stuff that you see on your Mac is actually drawn using HTML. And because of that, it frequently gets updated because people try and go in through the cracks and see if they can use it to compromise the machine. But on older iPads, older Macs, older iPhones, that's not updated. And right now, if you have anything that's older than an iPhone 10 or iPhone X, as a lot of people think of, it's insecure. it's just insecure and you should update it. So, but if it's a web browser, I would just quit it because that's probably all you need to do.
I have a
Thank you.
question that's probably really quick for you. So I'm doing work on my, I have the Mac Mini and a 27-inch screen. And so I'll have several things open, like Safari, something on Safari, and then I'll have maybe Quicken On and Excel. And then something happens, and I don't know what it is that I do, but everything wipes off the screen except one of them. And so then, like say there's only Excel left over, and I wanted to see them all at the same time. Well, then if I go and click on, the Word or Safari, then everything else goes, and it goes back and forth. And I don't know how to.
Are you using Sonoma?
Then no. Ventura.
Ventura. I think that might have been in Ventura too. I can't remember what they call it. Let me go check.
It happens, and it's so frustrating because it's usually when I'm doing some work, balancing some sort of thing, and then
Okay, there's a thing in it might have been in Ventura, it's definitely in Sonoma, called Stage Manager, that allows you to have one thing in front, and then when you switch to something else, it makes everything else go away, and so you have another thing in front. And it was designed to help people with their concentration. And to turn that off, you go into your system preferences, desktop and dock, and uncheck Stage Manager. Or in my case, I say only do certain things in Stage Manager, because it's designed to help people. A lot of people, they get lost in having a bunch of applications open, and it was Apple's attempt to help them concentrate. But
okay,
I like
Stage Manager is off. I checked that, and it is off, and it has been off, and so I don't think that's it.
well, that was my best guess.
Lawrence, there's been something in the macOS for several iterations that does exactly what she's describing. It's a way to unclutter your desktop. So
I
you can
like a
focus.
cluttered desktop.
Well, I'm just saying it's there on purpose, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's, you
there-
invoke it, and that does exactly what she's describing.
Yeah,
And
if you accidentally push an application all the way up to the top of the screen, the Mac will kind of rearrange your desktop.
That's probably what it is, because it's usually when I'm moving something.
Yeah, but if you just take the top bar of it and just run it all the way to the top of the screen, quite often it'll create little miniatures of windows, and you only see one thing at a time, and you're thinking, what the heck am I doing? But that's actually a feature, not a bug.
Okay, so it's the top of the screen that activates that. I bet you that's what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Somebody had a question last time, and I don't remember who it was, and I don't even know if they're on right now, but their question was, and I didn't notice because it was in the chat and they didn't say it out loud, but the question was that they were getting mail and they were answering their mail, and it was being answered from their iCloud account, and they wanted it to be answered from their Gmail account, and they wanted to know how to stop that. And the answer is Apple Mail has where it says to, from, and then down below that, it'll say there's things called account. And if you click on that, if you have multiple accounts, if you click on that, you can pick a different account that the reply will be sent from. And if you always want it to be sent from a different account, it normally defaults to the iCloud account. But if you go into Mail's preferences, you can select a different account to be your default account for replies. And again, I don't remember who asked that, but it was something I didn't even notice until I was looking at the chat transcript that somebody had asked that last time, and I didn't answer that. I frequently will do that because I'm an officer in a homeowners association, and people write to my personal account for homeowner issues. I don't want to reply from my personal account. I want to reply from the homeowner's account. I'm a church officer, and people will send me things to my personal account. I really want it to be in the church account. So I use that fairly often. Somebody will send it to my personal account and I'll either forward it to my other account or I'll just pick that other account to send a reply. It happens all the time. And the reason why I probably have 20 email accounts. The reason for having multiple email accounts is just to kind of tame the madness that a whole bunch of people want to contact you for a whole bunch of different things, and you want to have your personal email accounts to use for your family, and that's about it. And you want to have another one that you use for a business account or for a nonprofit that you work or something like that. Like as an example, if you were to send me a Mac question to my personal account, I wouldn't reply to it. Simply because no, I just don't do things like that. And in fact, I want to talk about questions that are sent to the vice president account. But again, you can pick which account that you send a reply from. And down below it says what is it? From, to, subject, and then down below that there's a button. It doesn't look like a button. You click on that, but all of your accounts that you have will pop up, and you can say which account will send back the response for that query. And it's just a way to make life easier on everyone. About questions, people have been sending email messages to the Strait Mac account, and I'm going to stop answering questions sent to the Strait Mac account. Unless it's about, when's the next meeting and things like that. And the reason is that I'm getting overwhelmed. And when I talk to you as a group, somebody can ask a question and I'm presenting an answer to multiple people at once. So that's a good use of my time. If you use the bulletin board, there's a discussion session on the bulletin board. If you write a question there, I can send a reply and multiple people will see it. But if you send it to my email account, I'm basically answering one person one-on-one, and it's taking up too much of my time. So I'm going to stop doing that. If you don't have an account on the bulletin board, there are only two requirements. One is that you be a paid SMUG member and send Annalise your membership fee. And the second one is you have to apply for an account if you don't have already. You have to go in there. There's a process that says do this, and you do that, and I get a message and saying, should this person have an account? And I say yes, and then you have an account. There's a whole section for a discussion board on the website, and it's set up topically for Macs and iOS and privacy and general questions. It's a better use of my time to write out a response there than it is to send responses to individuals. And I'm sorry I have to do that, but I'm not going to go into details, but Kathleen's been quite ill and I just am short of time. So that's how I'd like to proceed. And if that's unacceptable, you can overthrow me and elect a new leader. And any other questions?
Lawrence, I have one.
Okay, I'll
Juanita.
hit you in a second, Marcy. Marcia. Yes, go ahead.
I have a problem with like when I'm go to email and choose a new email, and then I'll start to enter a person's name and how to fill in their address, right? And today I did that to a friend that's really in a hurry, and slam bam, I sent it to her and it comes back undeliverable because every email that they've ever had is in that little drop down window when you select a new email. And in my address book, I only have the one address. And is there a way to get rid of those? Because if it's someone I don't know and 3 or 4 of these come up, because when you choose it, something will be highlighted. Well, it was really fast and I didn't notice it was the wrong one, but I can't memorize my whole address book of which address is their current one and proper one. Is there a way to eliminate those that that are any good anymore?
Is this with Apple Mail?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let
Like,
me share my screen and see if
Okay.
if we're talking about the same thing.
mhm.
And I don't need you to be here. You can go away. I don't need you to be here. Let's go to Mail. Mail has this
Okay, now-
thing over here called previous recipients. And if you go here, like I used to work for NOAA, so I can type in noaa.gov and it'll list, or just NOAA, and it'll list who's, these are people who have a NOAA email address or something. And if I don't want to talk to that person anymore, I can click on them like Matt Kendall, totally don't need him, remove him from list. So that's how you
Uh-huh.
get rid of those old cached addresses. You just go into
Okay,
Mail
and
to
which-
Windows, previous recipients.
Okay, so just like I click this little guy right. Oh, you can't see my pointer, I guess. You know, the letter with the check mark in it when you choose a new email, when you're in email.
Letter with a check mark in it.
This little guy, new message, the new message. When you click this,
Oh, that's yeah,
And-
okay. That's actually a pen.
Yeah,
That's not a check marks.
okay, all right. When you bring that up, and then I can just, I'm starting because we send emails all the time, and I put in her first name, and then it comes up with these suggestions, and I just sent it very quickly, and I didn't notice because she has two or three from the past, and they're very similar.
Yeah,
And
and that's how you go. You go.
the only times I have ever had something unsendable has been because of that reason. And I just didn't know how to get rid of all those that were, not in use anymore. So Windows, previous recipients. And would I go in there and like check the new message, and when it drops down, delete them from there?
No, this has nothing to do with the new message. This has to do with these are stored messages. I don't even know how many there are, but these are stored addresses from people, and you just search
Right.
for the person's name, like Aaron.
Okay.
Aaron's a guy who works for Apple. I don't want to talk to him anymore. So I click on that and I say remove from list. But if you have, I don't want to get rid of Aaron, so I'm not going to do that. But you have some, like I used to live in an area that had Comcast, and it doesn't show Comcast. I guess it's not doing that. It's doing the person's name. Well, anyway, you just you type in the person's name, and they should be in alphabetical order, and you can search them all by, it's also by the email address. Maybe that's what I need. Yes, that's what you do. So it depends upon which column you're hitting. But when you delete this, and then when you go in to type someone's name, it won't use one of those previous recipients that you've deleted. But otherwise, it just keeps them, because a lot of people don't bother. I know a lot of people who don't have an address book at all. What they do is they're just constantly going to old messages and replying to them, which is a terrible way to do things. But getting rid of the old addresses, that's how you do it. You go into previous recipients. Google has a way to do that as well in Gmail. It's a little bit puzzling to figure out how to do it, but my homeowners association, for example, we switched offices with people. So I'm in a position, I used to be the vice president, now I'm the secretary. And since you're sending it to secretary at such and such, it was putting the old person's name there. So I had to get rid of I had to get rid of my own secretary account in previous recipients in order to put my current address there. Otherwise, it kept on saying it was coming from this other guy, and he's not me. So, but that's the way to do it. You go in and get rid of previous recipients. It's a common question. It's just that a lot of people a lot of people can't articulate it as well as you did. So that's why when you started down that path, I said, oh yes, I've heard this before. At Washington Apple Pie, which is a huge user group on the East Coast that I still am an officer of, and at San Diego User Group, at their peak, each of them had over 5,000 members. And I would do the question and answer. And I created a rule that people were not allowed to ask email questions until the last 3 minutes, because otherwise, if somebody started with an email question, every single question for that whole Q&A was about email. So email puzzles a lot of people.
Thank you for asking that question, though. That's a very good reminder because I keep forgetting how to do that.
I don't know what time it is. It is, okay, we got 4 more minutes for questions. Anybody have a question? Oh, Marcia, you had a question. Your microphone's off.
Last month, I told you I was having trouble with Gmail, and you said that they were having some problems. Well, I'm still having problems with Gmail, and it's interesting that I send something and it looks like it goes off, and then it reappears. And then when I try to log out, I wind up with a stack of emails that have not gone anywhere. And so I'm trying to deal with them. And if they won't go Gmail, I'll try with one of the other options, and it looks like they go, but they don't. They keep reappearing. The same emails keep reappearing. And I might say that I don't have this problem on my phone. I just have it on my desktop.
Okay, on your desktop, how are you sending the Gmail messages?
I just push send, you know,
No, I mean, are you using Apple Mail, or are you using a browser, or what?
Safari.
Okay. What you need to do is go into the sent mail folder in Gmail. It's one of those
Right.
folders on the left-hand margin,
Right.
and see if it's in the sent mail. If it's sent mail, then it really was sent. And if it's not there, then go into the draft folder and see if it's in draft. Sometimes the only way to, sometimes you might create a involuntary queue. A queue means things are in a line. You're at a stoplight and you can't go until the car in front of you goes, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
And if one of them's stuck, all of you are stuck. This happened to me on the ferry last week. One of the cars, the driver didn't come back when the ferry arrived, so everybody in that line was stuck for a while. And you might have to just go through your drafts folder and find which one is stuck and delete it. And if you need that message so that you can try again, copy the contents of the message, but then delete the message out of draft, and that might get rid of the clog. But quite often, if it's stuck, it'll just back up everything behind it. But check also in your sent mail. When you think you've sent it, go into sent mail, because it won't be in sent mail unless Gmail really did send it. I had somebody who sent me like 24 copies of the same email. I kept on sending, and they was getting increasingly frantic. I keep on sending you this email and it's not going anywhere. Oh, it didn't work again. Oh, there's this long chain. It was all one message, and they were all coming to me. Why he didn't think they were going, I don't know. But the way to check is to look in the sent mail folder.
Maybe she's
Okay.
got her own email address in the CC, and maybe it's actually a copy coming back to her.
Sometimes Gmail will get it stuck because it doesn't like the validation format, because there's something wrong in the domain name, or the moon's in the wrong place, or whatever. Most of the time, Gmail has a really good reason for not sending it, but sometimes it is puzzling. Like I had one in which I was replying all, and one of the addresses was invalid, so it was stuck in draft because, hey, this second email address that you're in this reply all is invalid. So it was stuck there until I went and got rid of it.
Okay, well, it's not in sent and it's not in drafts. So yeah, I'm just incredibly frustrated having sent the same email thing at least 20 times.
Is it to the same address?
Yeah, to my husband, I kind of know his address, so I know it's okay.
Well, I don't know. He could be doing something really weird.
Yeah, I'd like to blame it on him.
That was my best guess. Sorry.
Okay.
I want to, oh yes, there's our president. Your microphone is muted. Hello there.
Hello there, how are you?
I personally am not doing all that great, but details.
Oh, well, I'm sorry about that. I hope you feel better.
It's not
Or-
me, it's Kathleen.
Oh, that's too bad. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Did you have a nice time at the Apple store? I know you went to the favorite one. Based on
I was there for only like 5 minutes, and I'm going to show 2 pictures that I took there.
I'm sure it's the tree, right?
One of them is going to be the tree, yes.
Well, welcome everybody. I don't see any new names. So I just welcome everybody back. I have nothing really new to say. I'll just hand it over to the treasurer and she can go over the money that has, I guess some stuff came in.
Yeah, well, we have 2 checks that came in the last couple of months for dues. And so with those 2 checks, well, thank you very much for those who send them in. And the balance right now is $2,032.66.
And I'm going to spend some of that. So
Okay.
I just keep
Let
on
me know how
forgetting.
much.
I keep on forgetting to send you the invoice, but
Okay.
any other business we want to attend to? One thing that we should think about is elections, because we really should have elections every year.
Yeah.
Just to promote democracy and all that. And the second thing I want you to think about right this second is, are we going to have a meeting in December? And if so, what are we going to talk about? So unless we have other things that I want to get on with my presentation.
My mom and I had actually talked about that, and we both thought that it might be nice to not have it in December since it's so close to Christmas.
Yeah, I was thinking something similar, but I leave it up to the collective wisdom. We don't have to have a decision now. It's just something I want you to think about. Okay, I'm going to share my screen so that I can talk about some other things first before we get to browsers, but I'm going to share my screen here. And oh, that's not what I want. This is what I want to do. Apple introduced some new computers at the start of the month. At the end of last month, and they called it Scary Fast. And the reason they called it Scary Fast is the new computers have a new chip. The M1 chip was the first Apple Silicon chip, and that was followed by the M2, and now we have the M3. And this first graph, which I actually think is interesting, shows the power of the M3, the relative performance of the power of the M3 compared to a 12 PC core PC laptop. And you see that it exceeds the power of this 12 core PC laptop. But the important thing is it's using only 1/4 the power. And Apple kept on emphasizing this because by having more power but using less electricity, the battery runs longer. And their new, depending upon the model that you get, some of their new MacBooks have a 20-hour battery life, which means by the end of the day, you're going to be really, really, really tired before your laptop gives up. But there are 3 different models: M3 and M3 Pro and an M3 Max. The M3 is the base model. The M3 Pro has more stuff, and the M3 Max is on the high end. They came out with new versions of the MacBook Pro in I don't remember which size, the 14 and 16-inch. I don't remember the details. You can see it on the Apple site. And they also came up with a new versions of the iMac 24-inch. And that's something I wanted to talk about because I played with both of these very briefly at the Apple Store at University Village last week before last. And I was impressed with the speed of them. But I have been saying for some time that people have been saying, I'm waiting until they come up with another 24-inch iMac. I'm convinced that Apple's not going to come up with a 24-inch iMac because they don't need to. If you really want a 24, and by the way, pound for pound, the iMac is a better deal than a MacBook. It has more power because it's got more room for stuff in it, and it's less money. The MacBooks, because they're compressing everything into a tiny space, cost more money than a desktop machine. And the iMacs are really a bargain given the amount of horsepower they have. If you get the iMacs come in two basic versions. One has 2 ports in the back and one has 4 ports in the back. If you get the one with 4 ports in the back and you get it with 16 gigs of RAM and a terabyte drive, you will blow away any 24-inch, 27-inch iMac that was ever made. And if you think the screen is too small, even though it shows more pixels than that 27-inch screen did, if you think you still need more space, you plug into one of those 4 ports in the back and you set up another monitor. It'll support multiple monitors. You just plug another monitor into it. It's a little bit tricky because it only has USB-C ports in the back, but it's not that difficult to get a monitor to plug back into the back of the iMac. And if you don't want to go that route, the other route is to go get a Mac Mini. The M2 Mac Minis are very, very, very powerful. And just go out and get any monitor you want and get your own keyboard and mouse, plug it into the Mac Mini, and you have something that's more powerful than any 27-inch iMac ever was. So that's my little spiel on why you should pay attention to these new Macs. I'm really, you really shouldn't be waiting forever to upgrade an old Mac. The security, the convenience, so on and so forth of the new Macs is just, it's not really comparable. And this is where I was when I was playing around with it. This is the University Village Apple Store in Seattle. It's about, I don't know, a mile from the campus. It's about across some ball fields and so on and so forth. There's Lake Washington, and then there's the University Village. And you can sit on these little cube things here and watch this giant screen. I only have part of it here. When they installed this screen, it was the largest LCD screen in the state of Washington. I'm sure that somebody come up one bigger for now, but they'll do demos and run commercials and teach classes, and you sit on these stools and it is projected on the screen. The other thing that I like about the store, it's very nice, clean layout. This was a Tuesday or Wednesday, and there were a lot of people in the store. It wasn't a holiday or anything in particular. There were just a lot of people in the store. And I was in there for just a few minutes, and 3 different people, all men, came up, wanted one of the new 16-inch, the larger MacBooks with the space black finish, and bought it on the spot. Didn't even test drive it. They just came in, plopped down their credit card, and walked out with a machine, which cracked me up. I think most women shoppers would have at least tried it before walking out of the store with one. But I did test them in the store. I have a standard test that I do where I take the photo library that they have on the demo machine and I export it and see how many seconds that takes. And it doesn't take that long. These things are blindingly fast. And then I render a couple movies. And they're really, really fast. The other thing that I like about the store is this tree. This tree is growing up through the center of the store, and it was raining. So if I blow this up, you can actually see the raindrops on the leaves of the tree. It's just this glass box opened at the top, and the tree is grown up through the roof. And it just it gives me great joy to go in and talk to the tree. So I'm a bit strange. The topic tonight is web browsers, and the first thing I want to talk about is this is not the one I wanted. This is the one I want. So we'll make you go away for a second. This is a cartoon by a woman named Julia Evans, who does cartoons for the for Linux users, and it doesn't make any difference that she's a Linux user, because this applies to all of them. And a lot of her cartoons also apply to Mac, because the underlying operating system for the Mac is Unix. In a URL, this first part, she calls it a scheme, but it's really a protocol. The protocol tells you what kind of protocol it is. A web browser could have something called FTP, which is File Transfer Protocol, to talk to a file server or a bunch of other protocols. HTTPS means it's talking to an encrypted web server. So that part there is the protocol. This part here, where it talks about the port, is another way of just talking about the protocol. HTTPS means encrypted, and port 43 is the port reserved for encrypted websites. If this was HTTP without the S, the port would be port 80. And you don't need to remember this. It's just that HTTP with no S means that it's unencrypted. Anything you're sending, anybody on the planet can read that. HTTPS, it creates an encrypted tunnel. It's not really a tunnel. It's an encrypted conversation between you and that website. So that's that first part is the protocol. The second part is the domain. The domain is the name of the service and then the type of the service. .com means commercial. Doesn't have to be, but that's the tradition. .com means commercial, and example cat is the name of that particular server there. And then the paths part is something I want to talk about. The path, this is the path to something. So this one has cats, and then this query string is telling the database that you're looking for light gray banana-shaped cats, I guess. But the thing after the query string, thing after this question mark, is the query string. And I mentioned this because I want to show you a couple things. And we're going to push this down out of the way for a second. And I thought I had set one aside. I don't see it right this second. I can't find it. So why don't you go back over there? We're going to go to the Strait Mac YouTube page. And Strait Mac, yeah. Strait Mac has a YouTube page. And you click here, it takes you to our YouTube page. And we're going to click on, this is last month's meeting, and we're going to stop it right there. And we're going to say, share this URL. So here's the URL that it's going to copy. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it into Word because I want to blow it up. Yes, yes. Here is the string that leads you to that video. I'm going to blow it up a little bit bigger so you can see. It says HTTPS, meaning S means it's encrypted. U2.be. BE is the domain name for Belgium, but you don't really need to know that. YouTube, and then here is the address. Well, I'm going to take this address and I'm going to paste it into the browser. And it's going to go to that same video. Well, I'm going to now get rid of everything after this question mark. And paste that into the browser. And it goes to the same video without all that stuff afterwards. So my question to you is, what is all that stuff after? What is all that stuff that's out here? Anybody want to speculate?
Specific file where it's kept or something?
Well, it depends upon who they are. In the case of YouTube, I could actually I could move to someplace in this video and say I want to grab it from that point, and I say share, and it's going to give me a different URL. And then if I send that to someone, you notice that it after the query string, it's changed. If you paste this into my browser, it'll go to that portion of the movie. It'll skip the other parts and it'll go to that portion at 59 minutes into the video. So that's what, in this case, that's what it's doing. It's saying that I want you to go to the video that's at this location, but I want you to go to this point in the video. And for this first one, the point, it happens to be the start. But so that's what this query string is. It's sending additional information to the server to tell it something. However, quite often, everything after that question mark is used to tag you. It's called a hashtag, and it helps identify. So if you've been on the Washington Post site and you click on an ad, when it takes you to the page, takes you to the server that is advertising. Like every time I go to the Washington Post, I'm almost always offered a video of buying a jet fighter plane. And so for the heck of it, I always go to them because, you know, I want to know what the latest in jet fighters that Lockheed wants to sell me. But when it does that, everything after this question mark is telling Lockheed that this guy who's looking at jet fighters came from the Washington Post. So it's tagging me and it's telling them about me. And that's why you kind of want to be a little bit careful about the parts that are after this question mark. If you want to maintain your privacy, go through and delete that stuff before you send them on to somebody. Like you have I had a friend who works for the National Institutes of Health, and she was talking to someone about sexual abuse, and she went to the site that had articles about sexual abuse, but she was very careful to strip off that stuff because as a government employee, she couldn't be recommending this non-government site. So she was stripping that off so that it wouldn't say that it was coming from a government employee. So you want to pay a little bit of attention to the things that appear after that question mark. And for some things, such as newspaper articles, the newspaper article may not work if you strip off the oh, go away. Delete. The URL may not work if you strip off that hashtag, because that hashtag might actually take you to a place in the database of the newspaper site. So it doesn't always help, but you want to be a little bit suspicious about when you see a URL, it's got a question mark. I had there's a site called Space Technology or something like that. That every time I go there and I see a page I like and I copy it and send it to somebody, the real URL is less than a line long, but it sends about 8 or 10 lines worth of code. And that's because this space technology site, that's how they get their revenues from advertising. So they want people to know that you went to their site, and I was looking at this particular page that had this company's advertisement on it, even though I'm not interested in the advertisement. So you want to be a little bit careful about that. And that's why I was telling you about about what those parts of the of the URL. So this is the protocol and that is the name of the server. And this part here before the question mark, that's the path where that stuff is stored on the website. And to give you some examples, we'll go to the Strait Mac site. And can we blow this up a bit? If I if I look at home, you'll notice that home up here at where the URL is, there's nothing after that. But if I click on blog, it changes this, and now the path says blog. And if I say useful things, it says useful things, and so on and so forth. So depending upon what I click on, it actually changes the path there. And on useful things, if I I click on, actually, I don't want that. I'm going to go to articles. Here's an article on troubleshooting Windows as by what ChatGPT does if it was Chaucer. And it says straightmac.org/article/troubleshooting Windows in the style of Chaucer. That's the path to this article. So and I'm mentioning that because a lot of people use the web all the time and they never really think about what it is that they're doing. So I wanted to mention that. And another thing I wanted to mention about is a lot of people I know store their passwords in their web browser. And so I wanted to show you this cartoon, which I really like this cartoon. And having said that, let us get out of here and go into a browser window. And do I store passwords in my browser? And the answer is yes. There's a whole section here. I type passwords. If I enter my password to my machine here, it would list all kinds of sites that I store the password in my browser. However, having said that I do that, I'm very careful about what I do. I do not store bank passwords. I do not store find anything having to do with money, bill paying. I do not store those kind of passwords. So what kind of passwords do I have? I have a subscription to the Washington Post and one to the New York Times. I don't like typing the password in every time, so I store that in the browser. And I go to the New York Times and it just lets me in. It tells them, hey, this is Lawrence Charters, and lets me in there. And for things like things that I don't spend money on that are convenient. Washington Apple Pie User Group, my password is stored in my browser, so I can log into this without doing anything. But anything that involves money, you should not store it in the browser. You should store it in a password manager. And the one that I recommend is one called 1Password. So just kind of mentioning some of these things along the way. And I want to now talk about browsers. And the browsers I'm going to talk about are, I have a list here that I made. I'm going to do them very quickly because there are a number of them. First one is Safari. Oh, here's where I had that. I knew I stored it someplace. This is Safari. This is the latest version of Safari that comes with Sonoma. And with the new Safari, you can have profiles. This is a profile for me when I'm looking at things that I want to look at. But I can also have a profile for SMUG. When I switch to the SMUG profile, these are things that I want to look at when I'm doing SMUG meetings. Or if I want to look at news, this one has a bunch of news sites. Or if I want to, this one, by the way, is provided by Apple. I didn't do anything with it. And then I have one for Trinity, the church that I have. And it shouldn't be blank. Oh, I see. It's blank because it's trying to do the wrong thing. there's Trinity's YouTube account and Trinity website. So there are different profiles for doing things. And why do I have different profiles? If you are doing monthly bills, you probably want to have, you'll probably only want to see things that have to do with your monthly bills. You don't want to see things that aren't associated with monthly bills. And if you are still working, you might go in every morning and you open up the same web pages every time. So that's really nice to have all those things at once. You just store them in a profile. And profiles, and I should have showed you how to do that. You come into Safari, you go to settings, and you go to profiles, and you can set up profiles. So add a new profile, click this button, and you can give it a symbol and all kinds of different, you can give it a particular color if you want to, and then start creating profiles. And that way, that set of tabs will be unique to that function. So you don't have to you don't have to open up those tabs every time, or you don't have to open up those tabs when you want to do something else entirely. And Safari is the default browser on the Mac as well as on the iPhone and the iPad. And the underlying technology that is used in Safari is called WebKit. And I mention this because I have a site that tells me something about the underlying technologies of browsers. And the next browser I'm going to look at is Chrome. And years ago, I set up a page on the Washington Apple Pie site with I called it the paranoia page because people were concerned about cookies. So I click on the paranoia page and it tells me what my browser is telling the website that it's dealing with. And in this case, it says, this browser says it's Mozilla. Mozilla is the code name for the original Netscape browser. Mozilla 5.0 Macintosh Intel. I'm running this on Apple Studio, which does not have an Intel chip in it. Intel, macOS 10, 10.15.7, so it's actually a fairly old profile here. Apple WebKit 5.3, 37.36, which is old. KHTML, which is a type of encoder like Gecko. Gecko is the deciding thing here. Gecko is the technology that Chrome uses for rendering web pages. But you'll notice the first thing that listed was Apple WebKit. Now, when Chrome first came out, it was built using Apple's WebKit. So it was using Apple's code to create the Chrome browser. Now they use Gecko, but it's still backward compatible with WebKit. And then it tells you that it's Chrome. So, and this Safari 5.37, that just, again, it's just saying, hey, I'm like Safari, but it's not Safari, it's actually Chrome. Chrome was the first one, by the way, that had profiles. If I look at, this is what happens when I bring up Chrome. It tells me various different profiles that I can use. So if I click on Strait Mac, it only does Strait Mac things. Trinity is only my church things. They came up with profiles before Apple did. I like the way that Apple did it, though. Firefox is the next one I want to show you, and Firefox takes forever to load. And then it comes up with a wonderful commercial saying that I'm covered in their privacy and so on and so forth. If I go to Firefox to that page, again, it tells me the same kind of things. Mozilla, Macintosh, Intel, Gecko. Firefox is now using the Gecko engine is actually Mozilla's engine. Sorry, I said Chrome, but it's actually Mozilla's. And it's saying I'm using my own rendering engine for Firefox. I rarely use Firefox. Firefox at one point was it was the leading web browser out there, but right now it's something like 1.8%. They got into some political wars and said that we're not going to support these technologies because they're run by bandits and so on and so forth. And one of the things we did not have for a long time, they were not supporting JPEG. So your camera phone takes pictures in JPEG. You could not display it in Firefox because Firefox said it was evil. So they kind of knocked themselves out of the running, but I still use Firefox because there's sometimes I just want to see if Firefox works. Then I'm going to start getting into things that you probably haven't played with. Microsoft Edge. Microsoft Edge is the browser that Microsoft ships with Windows, and they have a version for the Mac. They also have a version for the iPad, so you can run Microsoft Edge on your iPad if you wanted to. Again, if I go to this page, it says Mozilla, Macintosh, Intel, Apple WebKit, KTML, like Gecko, which again is Mozilla, and like Chrome, and it mentions Safari. So what is Edge done in? Edge was originally done in WebKit as well. Most recently, they started using Chromium, which is a version of Google Chrome. Given a choice between using Microsoft Edge and Google Chrome, if you want to be very secure, Microsoft Edge actually has the edge in security over Google Chrome. And that's because Google Chrome has built in a lot of things to allow them to capture information about the user. And so just Google Chrome's not quite as secure as Microsoft Edge is, just as an FYI. The next one I want to talk about is DuckDuckGo. And DuckDuckGo comes with demonstration. I'm going to search for information about me. I'm going to type in Lawrence I. Charters. And two things to note. I'm typing this in quotation marks. When you type it in quotation marks, you're telling the search engine, search for this, and it's not going to work because I misspelled Charters. It'll look for exactly what you're telling it to. So I'm typing it in quotation marks, so it won't look for Lawrence and separately look for Charters. It'll look for Lawrence I. Charters. And if it doesn't contain all of those things, it won't show it. And I'm typing this in DuckDuckGo, and I come back and I say images. And it says these are all images that have something to do with Lawrence Charters. Now you'll notice there are a lot of sailboats and honest truth about some football player, Scrabble games, all kinds of things. I'm going to push this off to the side and I'm going to launch Safari and I'm going to tell it the same thing. Search for Lawrence. I forgot the quotation mark. Yeah, we know. Yeah, I know. You'll see that you have a very different set of images. This is about Lawrence Charters. This is about Lawrence Charters. Most of these have nothing to do with me. But this, and I can even say see more, and it's got just pages and pages and pages, pictures. Almost all of these are either I took the photograph, or it's about me, or it's a picture of me. So this was much, much more accurate. And that's one of my two big complaints about DuckDuckGo. A lot of people like DuckDuckGo because if you've seen the advertisements on TV, they protect your privacy and so on and so forth. All of what they say is true, but what they don't tell you is that it also gives you very inaccurate results because it's very incomplete. You get much more accurate and faster results using almost any other browser. So people, I'm really afraid that they're going to steal everything about me. And my first question to somebody who's trying to protect their privacy is, do you use the same password for everything? 99% of the people use the same password for everything, and yet they're paranoid about Google stealing them blind. The security issue is the fact that they don't have unique passwords for everything. Every single website I use a different password for that website. Every single one, even the ones I don't care about. And if that's a good security measure, but if you think DuckDuckGo can spare you from somebody stealing your identity, no, it really can't. That has to do with your habits. So I'm not, DuckDuckGo is slow, it's incompatible with a lot of things, and it's just not very accurate. So they'll probably sue me for saying all that, but I'm not a big fan of DuckDuckGo. Another one that's getting a lot of attention right now, and if you guys sign up for it, you'll get a lot of attention too, because they send me at least 1 or 2 emails a week, is something called Arc. And Arc is nice because it's got these nice little tabs, and you can write notes into it, and it'll give you tutorials on how to use it, and all kinds of things. It's nice. You can customize it in all kinds of different ways, give it new backgrounds, and it's got a movie built into it that tells you how to use the different features, all kinds of cool things. It's not particularly fast, and sometimes it crashes. I hardly ever see any other browser crash, but I have to admit that I'm intrigued with what they did. And Arc is a brand new browser. It came out in 2023. So this is hot new stuff. Oh, I want to tell you about the ages of these. Safari dates back to 2003. Chrome was created in 2008. Firefox goes back to 2004. Microsoft Edge is from 2015. DuckDuckGo, the browser, is 2022. Arc is a new one, and it's just interesting enough that I'm going to be paying more attention to it. Another one is iCab. Now, you'll notice the first thing that iCab comes up is there's a shareware please, tells you to please purchase a license. And that's about as far as I'm going to get, because I haven't purchased a license. But iCab has a couple of things going for it. It's the oldest browser out there. It's been around since 1999. It's older than Safari and any of the rest of them. The other nice thing about iCab is if you have a really old Mac floating around and you want a currently supported browser, pay the shareware fee and use iCab, because for some of these older machines, it might be the only thing that can safely run on them. Another one, a relatively new one. Actually, no, it's not. It's relatively new to the Mac. And if I can get it to come up, this is called Maxthon. It is created by a developer out of Singapore. It's been around since 2002. I told you that Safari is built upon WebKit. Chrome used to be built on WebKit. Now it's built on something called Chromium. Firefox uses Gecko. Mozilla, Microsoft Edge uses WebKit and Chromium. DuckDuckGo uses WebKit. It's kind of interesting. It's built upon Apple's technology. Arc is using Blink and WebKit, and iCab is using iCab. They're kind of unique in building their own. And Maxthon from 2002 uses Blink, which is another version of Chromium and WebKit. And it's not a bad looking browser. My big objection is that it doesn't do anything anybody else does. So I'm not opposed to it, but it doesn't do anything nice for me. This next one, I really like the browser, not because I've ever used it, because I refuse to sign up for your account. You have to have a Puffin account in order to use Puffin, but I happen to really like Puffins. I don't know if you are aware of it, but Protection Island in the middle of Swim Bay has one of the few nesting grounds for puffins in the continental United States. So Puffin is probably a wonderful browser, but I refuse to give them any credentialing information. So that's as far as I got with that. But it's their claim to fame is that it's a very secure browser and it's paranoid about going to different places. Maxthon uses Blink and WebKit. WaterFox, as the name might suggest, is based upon Firefox. It's just kind of a different. Somebody rolled their own version of Firefox. And it's not a bad browser, but there's nothing particularly, again, it's nothing particularly interesting about it. So it does tell you that it asks you to confirm before you close things, which is not kind of nice. Brave is another one that's gotten quite a bit of press because of it's supposed to be secure. What I don't like, things I don't like about Brave. Brave is actually fairly slow, and Brave sometimes complains about the wrong things, that it says pages are insecure when they're not. But again, Brave, their claim to fame is that they say that it's protects your privacy and security, but it's not that fast, and it might be secure, but it's relatively slow. Vivaldi is kind of an interesting thing. Vivaldi came out in 2015, making it fairly old in terms of browsers, but it has all kinds of neat features for things like you can write notes on it and a bunch of other things. It's really a nice browser. You can use it for a message reader and all kinds of things. What I don't like about it is that I really would prefer not to have all of these things in one web browser. I would prefer to have a separate note-taking app and whatnot. Another one I want to show you by not showing you anything at all is the Tor browser. This is the Tor browser. The Tor browser is funded in part by the U.S. Department of State. And it's very secure because when you talk to Tor, you don't really talk to Tor directly. You don't really talk to a website directly. You talk to and it's not the way to spell Strait Mac. That's not going to work. Yeah, that's the wrong one. One thing I don't like about Tor is that it's really, really, really slow, because when you launch Tor, it immediately goes out to this Tor cloud. And then when you have a request, the request goes to the Tor cloud, from the Tor cloud to whatever you're requesting, back to the Tor cloud, and then to you. So it's very slow. The advantage that Tor has, it's very popular in countries with repressive governments because they can't tell what it is you're looking at, because it never directly associates, it can't be traced back to you. And that's one reason why the federal government subsidizes it. And the last one is one of the oldest browsers out there, which is Opera, which dates back to 1995. And Opera is from a Norwegian firm. And it's a nice browser, but it also has some compatibility issues. When people are building websites, they tend to build them for Chrome and Safari, and that's basically it. Used to be, it was Internet Explorer, Safari, and Chrome, and now it's basically Safari and Chrome. So having gone through a whole bunch of whole bunch of browsers in very little time, telling you very little about them, what should I think you should pay attention to? I think you should pay attention to Safari because it comes on your machine. I think you should pay attention to Chrome because depending upon whose statistics you look at, it is the most popular browser in the world. But when they're talking about that, they're basically looking at desktop users. And I think you should pay attention to Microsoft Edge. You'll notice that I didn't say Firefox, but Microsoft Edge. Microsoft Edge, in spite of the fact that it's done by Microsoft, is really well done. It's very stable. They keep it up to date. Really have no particular issues with it. It's well done. It also allows you to, if you want to click on these little things, you can launch other Microsoft applications. If you don't have other Microsoft applications, you probably don't care, but it's not a bad web browser at all. Chrome I like, but I want to tell you the dangers of Chrome. Kathleen has a laptop with 16 gigabytes of memory. It's a M2 laptop. Yeah, it's an M2 Apple laptop with 16 gigs of memory. She has run out of space run out of memory on the machine. It won't actually stop doing what it's doing. It just gets slow because of Chrome. Every time you open up a tab in Chrome, it's about a gigabyte of memory is used. So if you have 16 tabs open, you're using 16 gigabytes worth of memory. And it just uses up a staggering amount of memory. The other thing, the good news, bad news, you see these little icons across the top here? Those icons are extensions, and the extensions allow you to do things like I can click this one and it'll tell me the IP address of the of my own IP, and it's telling me that's my IP and all kinds of things like that. You may not ever need this, but I use these. Like this one is this thing here is giving me a source code listing of the page that I was just on. And this one here tells me the technologies of various things. So I click on this and it tells me there's no detectable technologies. If I go to this one, if I click on that technologies, it lists all the different kind of technologies that go into creating this website. This is useful for me because I build websites. But the problem with a lot of these plugins is they make the browser slower. So Chrome is actually faster if I got rid of all these. But since I use Chrome basically when I'm building websites, I kind of like them. I just keep in mind that Chrome has some disadvantages in terms of memory usage, and there are some kind of iffy things about some of their privacy settings. They just got fined, I don't remember how much money, by the European Union, several $billions for privacy settings in Chrome. So I would suggest that you stick with Safari, Chrome if you have a need for it, and try out Microsoft Edge. You might like it. Firefox, even though they're no longer having their religious wars, if you just notice, it takes quite a while for it to load, and it just doesn't have any particularly redeeming features anymore. And that was mostly me talking for some period of time. So let me stop talking and let me stop sharing and ask if there are any questions. You want to know the record number of browsers I've had at any one time was 56.
Wow.
But I was being paid to do websites for the government at the time, so I had a need. I didn't even show you. There's a built-in browser in Terminal. You can actually use Terminal to go and grab web pages. It's not really a web browser. It's a web. It'll grab web pages, but it's not really a browser. Any questions? Okay, we're doing a quiz here. Is it safe to store passwords in your browser?
In the browser?
Yes. Like you're at a website and the browser says, "Do you want me to save your the password for this site?" And you say yes or no. Is that safe?
I'm thinking that it's not saving it in the browser, it's saving it in my keychain. And
Yes.
okay, so then it is safe, I would say.
No, it's not. It's not
Oh.
safe for financial institutions.
Mm.
If you have a bank, type your password in every single time. If you have a mutual fund, type your password in every single time. Two things. One, I have a retirement fund that's done by this fly-by-night outfit in Florida. They changed their security system and didn't tell anyone. And I found out about it because I went in there, typed in my password, and it didn't work. So I called up the help desk and said, "Oh, didn't you get a message that we were changing our security system?" "No, I didn't, you doofus." But if my web browser had saved it, it just wouldn't have worked and I wouldn't have known why. So there are good reasons to always type your password into financial institutions and not save them in your keychain. If it's saved in your keychain and your housekeeper comes in and you're vacuuming the floor and you left your computer on, your browser window's open, they can go to your bank and empty it because it's built into it's your browser kept it. So it's not good for anything that you spend money on. So your PUD bill, do you want to save your PUD password in the browser? Well, they're not storing your money, you're giving them money. So PUD, maybe you can do that, but anything that you're going to spend money on generally, or anything that's saving money, don't store your password. But
So-
save it for things like the Washington Post, New York Times, the Ladies' Home Journal, if I don't even know if they still exist, but anything that is that you have to have a password in order to use their service, but you're not having a financial transaction. Yeah, you can save it in your keychain if you want to.
Okay, so what about if you're using your iPhone or your iPad and it's either facial recognition or fingerprint? Is that okay?
That gets a little bit tricky. I'll give you an example that when they first came up with the facial recognition, this Apple engineer, I might have told this story already. This Apple engineer had this game on his phone that his 4-year-old liked to play, 5-year-old liked to play. And one morning he wanted to play the game, but his father was still asleep. So kid grabs the phone, holds it in front of his father's face to wake up the phone, and plays the game.
Smart kid.
If you have to type the password in, they can't do that. They can't take your finger and put it on the fingerprint pad. They can't hold your phone up and unlock the phone. So the answer is, yeah, I'd still probably type it in, even on your phone.
Cool. Good to know.
Julie, are you asking something? Because your microphone's off.
So you did suggest using 1Password for money accounts.
Actually, I put all my passwords in, even ones that I don't care about. Well, even ones that aren't dangerous, like my New York Times is in my 1Password. Why? Because I might be using a new browser and I can't remember the name of the New York Times account. So it's in 1Password. I use it for everything.
So then if you have your money password stored in 1Password and you go to your bank and you go into the user, can you just like click on it and it will come up with 1Password, or do you have to?
It's a little bit complicated, but yes, you can have 1Password enter your password for you for certain types of things. It'll use Safari to enter a password. So if you go to the bank, then 1Password will open the account and you don't actually have to look at it. Even though I still, as I mentioned, I prefer typing it in, because if I type it in and it doesn't work, then that tells me that there's something wrong. Whereas if it's unlocked by keychain or if it's unlocked by 1Password, it won't tell me what's wrong. It's not working, but I don't know that the password's the issue. So I still, for financial accounts, even though 1Password has that as a service, I don't use that. I always type it in. And you have to remember that I'm a professionally paranoid. I not only created websites, but I also kept hackers out. In 25 years, nobody got into my websites, and some of them got millions of hits an hour. So, a lot of exposure, but they didn't get in because I'm paranoid.
Maybe sometime you could have a class on thinking up good passwords that you can remember.
I will tell you, it's very simple. Don't use passwords, use passphrases. My passwords are when we moved to when we moved back to Washington State, we're both from Washington State. When we moved back here, I listed the criteria of things that I wanted. Wherever we moved, had to have volcanoes, had to have ocean, had to have ferry boats. And so Kathleen promptly suggested New Zealand, which was a good suggestion because we both like New Zealand. But volcano, space, ferry, space, ocean, space, April is a good password. It tells you that you created it in April, which means by next April you should probably change it. And it's a lot of letters. And some of those have an uppercase. Volcano, it probably has a capital V, and others a lowercase. What makes a password secure? It's two things. First of all, it's your username. and your password. If you think about it, if you have the right username and the wrong password, you can't get in. But if you have the right password and you're using the wrong username, you can't get in. It takes both. So when you send this off, it sends off this really big number to the site saying, here's my really big number. Does it match the really big number that you have? And if it matches, then they let you in. But it requires both the username and the password. So my username is not, I don't have a username on anything that's just Lawrence. It's something more complicated. It can be your first initial, last name. It can be your first name and your last name. It can be something, but it shouldn't be, it's not just Lawrence. It's something more than that. And all of my passwords are not passwords, they're passphrases.
Okay.
This one guy who kept on forgetting his password at work, it's the name of a Robert Frost poem. His password, because he kept on forgetting it, I made it "Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening," which, is, you might know, was the poem that Robert Frost had at Kennedy's inauguration. And he had to every day type that in, and he remembered it in spite of the fact that it was quite long, but it was very secure and it was long.
Okay.
And length is what is important. You will, if you work for the government, say has to have an uppercase, has to have a lowercase, has to have a special character, has to have a number. And so then you use a blank as a special character. You say, nope, you can't use a blank. Whoa.
Yeah.
You shouldn't put limitations on it. And a lot of government passwords are insecure simply because they put so many restrictions on how to make the password. They're actually making it less secure. But the length is not nearly the complexity of the password is not nearly as important as the length. I know a lot of people, they have a Google password, then they have G00GLE. So they're typing Google, but with zeros. They think they're so clever. No, that can be broken in a second, a fraction of a second. But if they said, Google is run by billionaires, that's a great password. It's long and it's complex.
Okay, thank you.
So don't worry about something that you can't remember. Just worry about length. Any other questions? No other questions? Oh.
But that's what the question was going to be.
So
I want to tell you something about why I think browsers in particular are important. The last month I worked for the government, and admittedly, I made websites for a living. The last month that I was at NOAA, I used my browser 99% of the time that I was using the machine. 1% of the time I was using Excel, 99% I was using a browser. I didn't use word processor at all. When I did word processing, I actually did it in Google using my browser. I didn't use, I used a spreadsheet because there's some things that Excel just does really well. So I did use 1% of the time on Excel. The database I did using a browser. It was a cloud-based database. Browsers are incredibly important and powerful. And don't discount when a lot of people say, when I'm getting a new computer, I don't need that much because all I do is web browsing. I just explained earlier that Google with 16 tabs open can use all of your memory in a 16 gigabyte machine. They're complex programs. Just web browsing is not an indication of not doing much. That's actually an indication of doing a lot. You just personally aren't doing all the work. The web browser is. So don't discount web browsers and web browsing. It's very complex, very, very powerful, and also potentially quite dangerous.
I have a question.
Google's-
Oh, go ahead.
Google is pretty invasive, isn't it? I mean, like they're coming into my Apple Calendar. Now I can't, and things like that. And I want to keep it as clean as I can.
I have mixed feelings about Google. I use Google extensively. I use their indexing services. I use their search engine, so on and so forth. Am I afraid of them, my privacy security with Google? No, because I'm also fairly paranoid about it. Um, um, if Google's trying to put things in your calendar, it's probably because you're using a doctor's service or something, and it says, can I add this appointment to your calendar? And you say yes. So it tries to stick a Google appointment into your calendar. And sometimes it's entirely accidental, or you just click on a link and it's saying, oh, you want to save that in your calendar. So that's not necessarily invasive so much as that is Google doing what it's designed to do. It's designed, they have a calendar.
Well, you know, you have my calendar and all these names of calendars, and there's Google is in there.
Yes. But again, it's doing what it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And sometimes it might seem unrestrained, but it's really doing what it's supposed to be doing. Google mostly gets in trouble because of their advertising. If I am using, I will go into Amazon and I'll look up USB drives, and then I'll go into Washington Post and there'll be an advertisement for USB drives for me on the Washington Post. Why? It's because Amazon subscribes to a advertising service run by Google. And so when I was looking for USB drives on Amazon, Google says, oh, this guy wants USB drives. I go into the Washington Post, shows me USB drives. And yes, that is an issue, but I don't have to click on those ads. Doesn't hurt me, the fact that they're ignoring that they're there. Kathleen will tell you I'm really good at ignoring advertising. There was this one commercial on TV for this woman. It was a body wash, and about 98% of the woman's body at one time or another was exposed as she was demonstrating this body wash. And Kathleen says that that's the only advertisement that she ever recalls me paying any attention to on TV, because we're pretty immune to advertising. So you can just ignore the ads. That's not really what's invasive. What's invasive are people using simple passwords and getting broken in and then saying, oh, they hacked my iCloud account. No, they didn't hack your account. You put something up so that allowed somebody to guess what your password was. Or they hacked my Google account. They probably didn't hack your Google account. You probably put something up that allowed somebody to guess what the password was. Most alleged hacking accounts, it's the user themselves was a little bit careless. So
Speaking of hacking, I guess it's through notifications. So where the little window comes up there in your right upper corner.
Yes.
And I am being hacked. Your iCloud account is being hacked, and all these. It's coming up every minute or so. While we've been sitting here, it's comes in, and I go to notifications, and of course nothing is in there. But how can I get this stopped? This has been going on for a while.
If you're getting notifications like that, you probably have a JavaScript. You probably accepted a piece of JavaScript that's creating those on your machine. So you're not being externally attacked. You're actually running a small program that's putting those up.
And they're trying to get you to respond, right?
Yes, they're trying to get you to respond. And there is a way to have you fix that, but you won't like it. And the way to do that is to go into your browser cache and completely empty the cache. Why you won't like that is most people, even though they say they don't save their passwords in their browser, they really do. And if you empty the cache, it'll log you out of all those sites. And you'll have to remember what your password is and log back in again. But it's probably something.
Of all the passwords you have on Keychain, you would have to.
It's not in Keychain. When you log into a site in Safari and it's saved in Keychain, that's one thing. But it also remembers the next time you go there that you were logged in. And so it just logs you back in again. But if you delete the cache, you'll have to log in fresh. It doesn't erase it out of Keychain, but you just have to type in your name and password fresh again. Everything
box will come up. That's easy to do, right? Like click.
Yes. But a lot of people never remember their password and they can't remember how to get back in. even if they've saved the password, they say, oh, I don't remember where my password is. And most of the time I can look at somebody's machine long enough and I'll figure it out. This one woman, she said she logged herself out of it. She couldn't get back in her bank because she deleted the cache because she was afraid she was being hacked, and she couldn't get back into her bank account. So I went over and looked at her machine, and in about 5 minutes I was back in again, because yeah, she did save a record on your machine. She just didn't know where to look to find it. And besides, if push comes to shove, go down to the bank and they'll tell you how to get back in. Banks
Okay,
really
we
don't
bought-
want you. Pardon?
We bought new iPhones and they arrived about 3 weeks ago, and they're still sitting here in the boxes because we don't know how to set them up.
If they're new iPhones, you just the instructions, you just put them next to the old iPhone, make sure they're both turned on, and they'll sit there and pass messages back and forth and ask you to do things. And depending upon the speed of your internet, after a couple hours, it'll have taken everything
Well,
off the old one.
You should know. Astound.
Yeah, I know.
Is there
But-
anything we can do about that? My computer is so slow, and it's old. I need a new one, I guess. And you're talking about all these wonderful things and all this speed and everything. We have Astound. You're like Walter Matthau in his movie, and he had the fancy sports car, and he never could, and shows him in miles and miles of New York traffic all the time. He's going in all the time to get the because it ruined the car. And I feel that way with our computers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's our computer or it's Astound.
It's probably a combination of both. This is my new iPhone, and I set it next to my old iPhone. They asked me to do various things between the two of them, and it took about 4 hours to transfer 130 gigabytes worth of data from the old one to the new one. So I just sat there and let it do its thing overnight, and it was happy.
Is it doing it by Bluetooth, or is it doing it over Wi-Fi?
That does it over Wi-Fi.
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
What kind do we-
Yeah, did you want us to sign in? That's one.
I forgot to
And-
make a sign-in pad. So yes, that would have been a good idea, but I forgot to make one.
Okay,
My
then
new-
for sure, we're not gonna meet in December.
Yes,
Right.
no, are we meeting in December is the question.
I say no.
I think the
Oh.
no's have it.
All in favor of not meeting, say no.
No,
No,
Okay. That seems to cover it.
I
Um,
have,
And I
we
I
got
want
iPhone.
and I want to thank you, Lawrence, for covering opera. I used that whenever that was, decades ago, 2 decades ago, and really enjoyed it and was
did you put it in
mollified
the
when it didn't
refrigerator?
take off. Because I
Oh,
was so
no.
tired of,
I see
I
it.
think we were still using Netscape.
Yes,
Is there another
they-
one that's right
they were the first big competitor to
at
Netscape.
your dinner?
And it's still a nice browser. It's just not really necessary.
Hey, Lawrence,
Yes.
I need to run because I need to get to Costco before they close in 20 minutes.
Okay.
Was there anything we wanted to talk about elections, or before I'd like to log off?
Now go ahead, log off. We can do this via email.
And we do it, we'll see everybody in January.
Yeah, think about what you want to do in January. By the way, Strait Mac does not do driveway plowing, so if it snows, we don't do that.
Okay, well, I wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy Thanksgiving. Until we
Happy-
see each other in January.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, and Happy New Year, that too. Okay, everybody, have a good one.
Any questions before we log off?
Yes.
Where do you want us to post or send suggestions for meeting topics?
Send them to the vice president account, Strait Mac vice president account.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead with your question.
The phones that we bought is the 15 Pro Max, and our
Yes.
old phones are 6 Plus,
6S Plus.
6S Plus.
Oh. Well, that is a more of a challenge.
We switched from 8 to 15 Pro Maxes and no problem whatsoever. So I'm guessing the 6s will be the same. It did just like yours does. You put them beside each other. They look at that pattern that they make, and then they just do their thing.
Well, except that if it's a 6 and not a 6E, there was a next or a 6S. The 6, I don't know if it
6S
can
Plus.
do 6 Plus. Okay, that might work. So just do what he suggested. Just if you turn it on, it'll give you instructions on. Well, first thing to do is make sure they're plugged in and they have power so they can do this sort of stuff. But just
Make
turn
sure
on
she
the.
does, make sure she does a current backup.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
not on the 6.
that's a good idea. It should,
Current backup. What
yeah.
does that mean?
Back it up to iCloud. Make sure that everything on the phone is backed up to iCloud. And if your iCloud account doesn't have enough room, then, well, add more stuff to your iCloud account. It's easier to restore from iCloud than it is to try and transfer it direct from one phone to another. So
Okay, I
it's,
have a quick question.
How do you back it up?
These phones have eSIM card. There's no card, it's eSIM.
yes,
So I have to go to my provider that, it's a Consumer Cellular to see if they will let me use eSIM for the phone connection.
they should. Because what the eSIM does, the only thing it does is it gets rid of the mechanical, the physical SIM. It still works electronically the same way. So,
Okay.
but I have no experience with Consumer Cellular. I just know that from an engineering standpoint, it should make a difference.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, with that, I wish you all a good night.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.